Good morning, students. So today we will be discussing about the lacrimal apparatus and its pathological conditions like dactylocystitis, which is one of the commonest presentation in day-to-day practice. So this is a eye where we have a lacrimal gland which secretes the aqueous, and these are the lacrimal drop which drains over here through the duct into the eye, and it comes to the medial side with the help of the capillarity actions and with the help of the lacrimal pump mechanism. The tear from here to the lacrimal punctum, then canaliculi, common canaliculi, lacrimal sac, then nasolacrimal drop which drains into the inferior meatus. So lacrimal apparatus consists of the lacrimal gland which secretes tears, lacrimal lake, the lacrimal canaliculi, the lacrimal sac, and nasolacrimal duct which carries the tears into the nasal cavity. So these are the structures of the lacrimal passage. So you should also be able to draw the diagram which comes in your exam, and also in practical exam also they will ask you how you will draw the exam, this passage. Lacrimal gland. So what type of structure is a lacrimal gland? It is a large orbite. It has got almond shaped structure. It is larger. It has got the two parts, the orbital part and the smaller is the palpable part. So the orbital part, which is larger, is almond shaped, and it is lies in the lacrimal fossa on the anterior and lateral part of roof of orbit. So it is situated in the roof of orbit. It is almond shaped in the lacrimal fossa. And the smaller palpable part, which lies below, is separated from the larger part with the aponeurosis of the levator palpebris superiorlis, and it extends into the upper eyelid. So lacrimal gland, it has got two parts. It has got orbital part and it has got palpable part, which is separated by the aponeurosis of the LPS. Approximately 12 ducts of gland passes from the orbital part through the palpable part to open into the superior conjunctival fornix. So conjunctiva, by this time you know the structure of the conjunctiva. It has got the palpable part, bulbal part, and the joining is the fornix. We have got the upper fornix, which is a superior fornix, and the lower fornix, which is the inferior fornix. So this lacrimal duct which drains into the superior conjunctival fornix. So additional duct from the palpable part opens independently into the superior fornix. So some passes, these 12 ducts, they passes from the orbital part to the palpable part and they opens, and some directly they drains into the superior fornix also. In addition to the main lacrimal gland, numerous small accessory lacrimal glands are scattered around the conjunctival sac, especially in association with the conjunctival fornix. So the tear film is made of 3 layers. So we will discuss in the next class about the tear film and the secretions by the different glands. So those they are situated some in the lid and some in the conjunctiva. So lacrimal gland, it is supplied by lacrimal artery, which is a branch of ophthalmic artery, infraorbital artery, which is a branch of maxillary artery, and venous drainage is into the ophthalmic vein, and lymphatic drain joins from the conjunctiva and passes to the superior parotid lymph node. So the supply by the lacrimal artery, which is a branch of ophthalmic artery, and here you can make out the figure, so which we have discussed about this figure, so it will come repeatedly to you. So you have to practice this figure so that you will be able to read these branches. Venous vein is medially and laterally, medially to the angular vein, laterally to the superior temporal vein. Nerve supply, which we have discussed, and we will discuss about this detail in the fascial nerve also. So it is both by the autonomic and sensory supply. So the parasympathetic secretomotor nerve supply is derived from lacrimatory nucleus of fascial nerve. So preganglionic fibers reaches the pterygopalatine ganglia through the nervus intermedius and its great pretarsal branch and then the nerve to the pterygoid canal. So postganglionic fibers leaves the ganglia and joins the maxillary nerve. So they then pass into the zygomatic branch and the zygomatic temporal nerve. They reaches the lacrimal gland within the lacrimal nerve. So in this picture, you can see the preganglionic fibers, greater petrosal nerve to the pterygoid canal, then the post fibers to the here it reaches the maxillary nerve, and there it reaches the lacrimal gland. So preganglionic fibers reaches the pterygopalatine ganglia through the nervus intermedius. So this is the nervus intermedius, and the postganglionic fibers leaves the ganglion and joins the maxillary nerve. So they leaves the ganglia, pterygopalatine ganglia, and they accompany the maxillary nerve. They then pass into the zygomatic branch and zygomaticotemporal nerve. So zygomatic branch of the zygomaticotemporal nerve to the lacrimal nerve. They reaches the lacrimal gland within the lacrimal nerve. So if you remember this picture, it will be easy for you. In the seventh, when we will discuss the fascial nerve, we will discuss all about this. The sympathetic postganglionic fibers arises from the superior cervical sympathetic ganglia and travels in the plexus of nerve around the internal carotid arteries. So this is a superior cervical sympathetic ganglia. And they travels into the plexus of nerve around the internal carotid artery. They joins the deep pretarsal nerve, the nerve of the pterygoid canal, the maxillary nerve, the zygomatic nerve, and the zygomaticotemporal nerve, and finally the lacrimal nerve. So through this, they form the plexus around the internal carotid artery, and they joins this and they reaches the lacrimal gland through the lacrimal nerve. The sensory fibers reaches the lacrimal gland in the lacrimal nerve to the branches of the ophthalmic division of the trigeminal nerve. So sensory fibers are carried by the trigeminal nerve. So the what is the content of the secretions of the lacrimal gland? It contains the aqueous tear, which contains the lysozymes, which is the antibacterial enzymes, immunoglobulin A, beta-lysine, which is a bactericidal protein, which serves as the defense against a microorganism. So the main function of the tear is to moist the corneal epithelium. So it put the eye in moist conditions, and so that the cornea is always kept in moist conditions. It prevent from the dehydrations, and this lubricating actions in front of the eyeball will maintain the free mobility of the lid, so that the movement of the lid and movement of the eyeball is also easy with the help of this lubricating actions of the tear film. So this, I think this picture will make you easy to understand. This is a superior lacrimal punctum. Punctum is over here. It's a small opening. Then this is a superior canaliculi. This is an inferior lacrimal canaliculi. This is a common canaliculi, lacrimal sac, and nasolacrimal duct. So you see how it is bent over here. It's vertically, then it's horizontally. So when you make a figure, this should be shorter and this should be longer, and this common is again shorter. So while making the drawing, that also should be, you should keep in mind. And even the eye, the upper eyelid, it closes about 2 millimeter of the cornea, and the lower eyelid, it just touches the limbus. So this figure you should be keep in mind. So punctum, where it is located? It is located in the posterior edge of the lid margin. So you cannot see the punctum if the this lid is opposed to the globe, or when the punctum is seen, that means the patient has got ectropion. So by this time you know what is ectropion and what is entropion. Entropion is the in-rolling of the lid margin, and ectropion is the outward rolling of the lid margin. So in case of, there are gradings in case of entropion and ectropion also. So when the punctum is seen, means the patient has got an ectropion. Normally, you will not be able to see the punctum, both the upper punctum and the lower punctum. They will be opposed to the globe. So you have to pull the lid to see the punctum. Canaliculi, it passes vertically from the lid margin, the ampulla of about 2 millimeters. So it 2 millimeter, it's vertical. Then turns medially and runs horizontally for about 8 millimeter to reach the lacrimal sac. So the total length is about 10 millimeter. The canaliculi total length is about 10 millimeter. They unite with the lower canaliculi and they forms a common canaliculi. In some conditions, they directly opens into the lacrimal sac also. It's not necessary that it always forms canaliculi. So opens into the lateral wall of the lacrimal sac. So the small flap of mucosa, which is called the valve of the Rosenmuller, overhangs the junction of common canaliculi and lacrimal sac and prevents a reflux of tears into the canaliculi. So these valves acts as a one-way mechanism. They just allow to pass the tears from the canaliculi to the sac, not from the sac to the canaliculi. So there is a valve of Rosenmuller. So these valves are also very important. So lacrimal sac, it is 10 millimeter. Again, it is 10 millimeter. It lies in the lacrimal fossa between the anterior and posterior lacrimal crest. So where is the lacrimal sac situated? Which bone is involved over here? In the anatomical class also I have discussed, it occupies the lacrimal bone and frontal process of maxilla, which separates the lacrimal sac from the medial meatus of the nasal cavity. So it is situated in lacrimal bone and frontal process of maxilla. So it is situated in the lacrimal fossa between the anterior and posterior lacrimal crest. It is 10 millimeter. So this is also 10 millimeter. This is also 10 millimeter. It is easy for you to understand. But over here, the initial two part is vertical, then horizontal. So there are many different valves over here. So you should remember the few important valves, like valves of Rosenmuller, which we have discussed, Hassner valve, which it will come. Now nasolacrimal duct, it is about 12 millimeter. It opens into the inferior meatus, nasal meatus. The opening of the duct is partially covered by the mucosal fold, which is called the valve of Hassner. So obstructions of the duct may cause the secondary distensions of the sac. So what happens in case of the congenital lactocystitis? This mucosal fold is covered, it's not open, and it opens only after the tear mechanism is formed. So tear mechanism usually forms after the 2 weeks of the child is born. So the tear started to pass and this valve of Hassner, this fold is open. But in some conditions, this partial covering will be more thicker so that it may not open. So that the child, the parents will bring with the complaint of the watering. And if long term of watering, it can be associated with the discharge also. So we advise for the different procedure for these conditions. So So obstructions of this duct, there will not be the free flow of the tear, so that there will be the distension of the sac. Tears secreted by the main and accessory lacrimal gland, which passes across the ocular surface. So the few amount of the tear is lost by evaporation, and the remainder of the tear is drained through the following mechanism. So tear flow from the upper and lower marginal strip and enters the upper and lower canaliculi by the capillary reactions and also by the suction mechanism. So different muscles acts over here to acts as a suction mechanism. About 70% of the tear is drained through the lower canaliculi and the remainder through the upper canaliculi. So when you do the syringing test, you not only do the lower punctum, but you have sometimes the punctum can be occluded in the lower punctum. So you have to do through both the upper and the lower to check it whether because 30% is drained by the upper canaliculus also. So with each blink, the pretarsus orbicularis compress the ampulla, shorten the horizontal canaliculi, and moves the punctum medially. So you listen very carefully. When you blink, when you close the eye, what happens is that the pretarsus, the orbicularis muscle, which is compress the ampulla of the means initial part of the canaliculi, so that the canaliculi are shortened and they come punctum is come more medially to the wall. Simultaneously, the lacrimal part of the orbicularis oculi, which is attached to the fascia of the lacrimal sac, some part of the orbicularis muscle is also attached to the lacrimal sac, so which contracts and expands the sac, thereby creating the negative pressure, so which sucks the tear from the canaliculi into the sac. So same time, when the canaliculi contract and the ampulla punctum moves forward towards the globe, medially towards the globe, to take the to suck the tears. So the sac also, it creates a lacrimal sac also, it expands. When it contracts, it expands and creates a space, negative pressure, and sucks the tear from the canaliculi into the sac. So when the eye opens, the muscle relax and the sac collapse, and the pressure, positive pressure is created, which force the tears down the nasolacrimal duct into the nose. So gravity also helps in this role. So the punctum now moves laterally and the canaliculi lengthen and fill with tears. So this is a mechanism how the tear is drained from the eye towards the lacrimal passage. So the orbicularis, so even the passage is not blocked. But in case of the old age, if there is a dehiscence of this orbicularis oculi muscle, so there will be the epiphora, or there will be the watering in the case, especially following the trauma or following the old age. So if orbicularis oculi muscle, this has a great role. And this mechanism is called the lacrimal pump mechanism. Lacrimal pump mechanism, and we call it, it's a pump failure. If the tray, in spite of the lacrimal passage, good lacrimal passage, free flow of the lacrimal passage, if there is a watering, then it can be the pump failure. So there are different disease conditions like hypersecretions and epiphora. So reflex hypersecretion, which results from the stimulations of the sensory branches of fifth nerve due to the irritations of cornea and conjunctiva, and that can cause a watering. And other cause of the watering is the epiphora, in which the lacrimal pump failure due to the low lead laxity or weakness of the orbicularis oculi muscle, or mechanical obstructions at the level of the punctum, canalicula, lacrimal sac, or nasolacrimal duct. So these are the cause of the watering. So it's a hypersecretions, reflex hypersecretions. It can be the epiphora or it can be the mechanical obstruction. So at the level of the punctum, what can be the obstructive mechanism? So obstructions due to the congenital absence or closure of the punctum, due to the foreign body, due to the concretions, due to the cilia, burn or infection. So what is concretions? If you have completed the conjunctiva, then you can know what is concretions. So which is usually formed inside our eye due to the exfoliations of the epithelial material and following the burn. So the punctum can be blocked. Or it can be the canaliculi obstructions due to the congenital or acquired foreign body trauma, strictures, and even canaliculitis, the inflammations of the canaliculum. So it can be due to the actinomyces. Lacrimal sac, this includes a congenital mucous membrane fold, so which we have discussed just now. It can be the traumatic stricture. It can be the dacrocystitis, inflammations of the sac. So specific infections like tuberculosis, syphilis, dacrolithiasis, any stones or tumors or atonia of the sac. Or it can be due to at the level of the nasolacrimal sac, non-canalizations or partial canalizations or imperforated Peyronie's valve, or it can be due to the acquired cause of obstructions, traumatic strictures, inflammatory strictures, tumors, and disease of the surrounding bones. Or there can be the swelling of the lacrimal glands. Some conditions which you come across in your OPD, where there is a swelling of the lacrimal gland. So this comes in usually in case of the proptosis. Patient can come with a proptosis. So it can be the dacroadenitis, which can be acute or chronic. It can be the Mayeloski syndromes, in which a bilateral, symmetrical enlargement of the lacrimal and salivary gland associated with variety of systemic diseases like leukemia, sarcoidosis, tuberculosis. And it can be the Dacropes, which is a cystic swelling, which covers due to the retentions of lacrimal secretions following the blockage of lacrimal duct. There can be the different tumors of the lacrimal glands like lymphoid tumors and inflammatory pseudotumors in 50% of the cases, benign epithelial tumors or mixed tumors in 25%, and malignant epithelial tumors like adenoid cystic carcinoma, mucoepidermoid carcinoma, and adenocarcinoma in 25%. So these are the different tumors of the lacrimal gland. So swelling of the lacrimal gland can be inflammatory, can be associated with cystic swelling, can be associated with systemic disease, or can be associated with the benign and malignant tumors. So we summarize the tumors like this. So 50%, 25%, and 25%. So 50% in the lymphoid tumors, which is the pseudotumors, and 25% is the pleomorphic adenoma, and 25% is the malignant. In malignant 25%, you see the 20% is the pleomorphic adenocarcinoma, 60%, which is the most common, is the adenocystic carcinoma, and 20% is the mucoepidermoid carcinoma. So adenocystic carcinoma. So if there is any swelling, any proptosis, so we have to think for it. Benign mixed tumors is known as the pleomorphic adenoma and occurs predominantly in the young adult males. And malignant mixed tumors, it occurs in the older age group, present as a painful swelling for the short duration. So it's a painful swelling. Clinically present as a slowly progressive painless swelling. Painless swelling in the upper outer quadrant of the orbit, and it is locally invasive and may infiltrate its own pseudocapsule to involve the adjacent periosteum. So treatment is totally surgical removal with the capsule. So prognosis is good if we are able to do so. So this is a anatomical basis or applied anatomy, and other is a inflammatory condition. So inflammatory condition is dacrocystitis congenital, acute, and chronic. So we will discuss about the congenital dactylocystitis. So it occurs in 50% of the children suffers from the NLD block. What is dactylocystitis? It is the inflammations of the lacrimal sac. So clinically, it's evident is only 2 to 6% of the full-term infant at 3 to 4 weeks of age, and approximately 1/3 of the patients have bilateral involvement. So 50% of the child born with this conditions, they have the watering, and clinically 2 to 6% are full-term infant and 4 to at the 3 to 4 weeks of age, because the tear secretion starts at this age, and approximately 1/3 of the patients have bilateral involvement. So this is a conditions of the dactylocystitis with the discharge. The lower end of the nasolacrimal duct at the valve of Hasner is the last portions of the lacrimal drainage system to canalize, and it is caused by the membranous block of the valve of Hasner covering the nasal end of the nasolacrimal duct. So it's at the level of the valve of Hasner, the nasal, which is the last portion to canalize in the lacrimal drainage system. So there is a membranous block at this end, so there will be the watering. Most of the obstruction opens spontaneously within the 4 to 6 weeks after the birth, but conservative management with topical antibiotic and properly performed Kriegel massage are appropriate during the first 6 months of age. So what we advise to the child is the spontaneous, we just counsel the parents regarding it. And if there is any source of infections, any discharge started there, and we give the antibiotics, then we advise for the Kriegel massage. So what is this Kriegel massage? With the help of the little finger, we advise the child to massage from the area of the lacrimal sac to down to the at the ala of the nose. So with some pressure, so that it will create some hydrostatic pressures and rupture the membrane, so that the area is open for the free flow of the aqueous. The massage of the lacrimal sac increases the hydrostatic pressure and ruptures the membrane. So another thing is probing. We do after the 12 months. Spontaneous canalizations occurs in about 95% of the cases. So the first 2 years have the high success rate. Till the 2 years we can do the probing. We do the probing till 5 years of the age also, but if book says that if it is at the early age, the probing has a high success rate. So probing, just we have the lacrimal probe, and we through the punctum we insert it, and just we break that membrane. So 90% of the children are cured by the first probing, and further 6% by the second probing. So it has got the high good result that the probing will give the opening of the area. Adult dactylocystitis is an acute suppurative inflammations of the lacrimal sac, characterized by presence of painful swelling in the regions of the sac. So acute is a painful condition. It is a suppurative inflammations of the lacrimal sac. So sign of inflammations are present over here. So as an acute exacerbations of the chronic dactylocystitis, as an acute peridactylocystitis due to the direct involvement from the neighboring infected structures like paranasal sinus, dental abscess, and caries. So these are the aggravating factors for this. And a causative organism can be the Streptococcus hemolyticus or Pneumococcus or Staphylococcus. So acute dactylocystitis is the exacerbations of the chronic dactylocystitis, or it can be from the following paranasal structures, neighboring structures. So complications of the acute dactylocystitis can result in acute conjunctivitis, corneal ulcer, lead abscess, or orbital cellulitis. So treatment is we do with the both the systemic and topical antibiotics. So it is divided into the two stages. During the stage of cellulitis, we just control the inflammations with the systemic and topical antibiotics, anti-inflammatory, analgesic drugs, and heart fermentation. So we give antibiotics which covers those organisms, especially these are all gram-positive. So we give the cephalosporin group of drug, or we give the cloxacillin or flucloxacillin. And during the stage of the lacrimal abscess, in additional to the above treatment, when first started pointing on the skin, it should be drained with a small incision, and later on, depending upon the conditions of the sac, we do the DCT or DCR. So dacrocystectomy or dacrocystorhinostomy, we go for it. And even if there is an external lacrimal fistula formation also, we go for the antibiotic, fistulectomy, and DCT and DCR operations. Now, chronic dacrocystitis, which is a most common presentation than the acute dacrocystitis. So there can be the plain watering, or there can be the mix with the discharge. So it is a multifactorial and a vicious cycle of the stasis and mild infections for the long durations. It can occur. So what are the predisposing factors? It occurs at the age of 40 to 60 years. It's more common in female in 80% of the cases. It's probably due to the narrow lumen of the bony canal. So why it's more common in female? It is due to the narrow lumen of the bony canal. So it's rare negrous than in white, as in former the NLD is shorter, wider, and less sinusoid. So hereditary plays an indirect role. It affects the facial configurations and so also the length and width of bony canal. So it can be hereditary but not so common. Socioeconomic status has more common in low socioeconomic status. Beside that, there are some factors which are responsible for the stasis of the tear in the lacrimal sac, so which causes the watering. So these are the important causes of the watering in case of the dacrocystitis. So anatomical factors are comparatively narrow bony canal, partial canalizations of the membranous NLD, and excessive membranous fold in the NLD. So what are the factors, anatomical factors, why there is a more common in the female? So it is said that these are the factors, these are the factors, these factors can be more common in the female, so that the chronic dacrocystitis is more common in the female. So what are the anatomical factors? The anatomical factors are, there can be the narrow bony canal, there can be the partial canalizations of the membranous NLD, and excessive membranous fold in the NLD. So for foreign body in the sac, excessive lacrimations, mild grade of inflammations of lacrimal sac, and obstructions of the lower end of NLD. So what can be? There can be the polyp due to the obstructions at the lower end. There can be the deviated nasal septum. So foreign body in the sac, excessive watering, mild grade of inflammations of lacrimal sac, and obstructions of the lower end. So due to the neighboring structures also, there can be the mild grade of inflammations of the lacrimal sac. So what is the treatment involved in the chronic dacrocystitis? Chronic dacrocystitis cannot be treated with simply the antibiotics or simply the massage. These treatment are only for the congenital dacrocystitis. In case of chronic dacrocystitis, you have to go for the dacrocystorhinostomy. So this operation involved the anastomosis of the lacrimal sac to the nasal mucosa at the level of the middle meatus. And dacrocystectomy can also be done in certain conditions. So in the conditions where DCR surgery is contraindicated, like in which conditions the DCR surgery is, that is the dacrocystorhinostome is contraindicated. So we do the cystectomy only, just remove the lacrimal sac. So if the patient is too young, that is less than 4 years, or too old, that is more than 60 years. But the problem of the DCT is there will be the persistent watering in spite of discharge, and all things can be clear. There will be no sign of inflammations, or no cellulitis can be there, but the patient will have the watering. These things you have to explain prior to the DCT. And if there is this dacrocystitis is causing to be the cellulitis, then you have to go for the DCT in case of the child. Otherwise, in the child, we wait till the child is matured and we do the DCR surgery. So markedly shrunken and fibrous sac. If the sac is very small and we cannot anastomosis, or it's mostly fibrous, then it's very difficult to do. In the infection conditions like tuberculosis, syphilis, leprosy, or mitotic infections of the sac is there. So even after the treatment, we cannot do. Tumors of the sac is there, then also we cannot do. And gross nasal disease like atrophic rhinitis, we cannot do. And if the unskilled surgeon, if the surgeon are not well skilled to do the dacrocystorhinostome, then it is better to do the dacrocystectomy. So lots of bleeding will be there. It is in a small area, it is very difficult to do, and even the skilled surgeon cannot do this. There is a high chance of recurrent. So nowadays the number one contraindication is the atrophic rhinitis, where you cannot do the DCR surgery. Besides that, other modalities of the treatment are conjunctivocysto-rhinostomy, endoscopic DCR, and endolaser DCR. So with the help of the endoscope also, we do the anastomosis, and in the endolaser DCR, with the help of the endoscope and with the laser, we make an opening and we do the anastomosis of the lacrimal sac and nasal mucosa. So what are the evaluations for the watering eye? So examination under the diffuse light, regurgitation test, fluorescence dye disappearance test. So we put a fluorescent dye and see whether it's coming or not by putting a cotton in the nasal mucosa, and syringing, Jones dye test, and dacrocystography, and radionuclide dacrocystography, or which is called lacrimal crystallography. Okay, thank you for your attention. So these are the clinical evaluations of the watering eye. Is very important in our day-to-day practice, because come with the watering. So it can be due to the foreign body in the eye, or red eye. It can be due to the hypersecretions, reflex hypersecretions, or it can be due to the epiphora, or it can be due to the obstruction in the nasolacrimal passage. So these are the different mechanism where we test. We do the syringing through the punctum. We usually commonly do practice is a syringing, and we do. So all of you should see how the syringing is done in the OPD, and it is a common practice. So to see rule out the watering. So in the next class, I will discuss